Welcome to Legacy Coins, and before we go any further, I want you to stop whatever you're doing right now, because what you're about to hear might just change the way you look at every single coin you've ever held in your hand. Imagine this. You're cleaning out your grandmother's old dresser drawer, sorting through decades of forgotten trinkets and loose change, and there at the bottom of a dusty jar, half hidden beneath a button and an old bottle cap, sits a coin that looks like nothing special. It's small, it's familiar, it's the kind of coin you drop into a vending machine without a second thought. But this coin, this particular 1968 Jefferson 5 cents, is not just any nickel. This coin, depending on its condition and its story, has been valued at an almost incomprehensible $23.5 million. Yes, you heard that right. $23.5 million. For a nickel. And right now, as you're watching this, one of these coins could be sitting in your own home, in a dusty box in your attic, in a coin jar on your kitchen counter, or in a collection that hasn't been opened in 30 years. So do not touch that screen, do not skip ahead, and do not even think about leaving, because we're also going to be talking about another coin later in this video that will make even this number look modest. A coin so rare and so historically significant that collectors across the world have been hunting for it for decades, and the story behind it is almost too unbelievable to be true. But first, let's talk about this 1968 Jefferson Nickel and exactly why it has driven the rare coin world absolutely wild. To understand why this coin commands such a staggering value, you have to travel back in time to the late 1960s, a decade defined by turmoil, transformation, and transition. America in 1968 was a country in flux. The Vietnam War was escalating, political assassinations had shaken the nation to its core, and the cultural landscape was shifting in ways that would echo for generations. But inside the walls of the United States Mint, something else entirely was happening. Something quiet, something accidental, and something that would eventually be worth millions of dollars to the right person at the right time. The Jefferson Nickel itself has a proud history stretching back to 1938, when it was first introduced to replace the iconic Buffalo nickel. Designed by sculptor Felix Schlag, the coin features the profile of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse and his beloved home, Monticello, on the reverse. For decades, this coin circulated quietly through American life, bought candy bars, fed parking meters, clinked in coat pockets across the country. But in 1968, something went wrong at the Mint. Or rather, something went wonderfully, gloriously wrong, depending on which side of the coin collector's counter you're standing on. The United States Mint was under enormous production pressure in the late 1960s. The coin shortage of the mid-1960s had already forced the Mint to eliminate silver from dimes and quarters, and production facilities were being pushed to their absolute limits to meet demand. In this high-pressure environment, errors happened. Not just small, barely visible errors, but stunning, dramatic, impossible-to-miss errors that slipped through quality control and made it into circulation. Among the most prized of all 1968 Jefferson Nickel varieties are those struck with double die obverse, where the pressure of the minting process caused the design elements to be stamped twice at slightly different angles, creating a ghostly, doubled appearance on Jefferson's portrait, on the date, and on the inscriptions. When you look at one of these coins under magnification, the doubling is unmistakable. It's as if history itself stamped this coin twice, as if it wanted to make sure the world would notice. And the world did notice, eventually, but not before thousands of these coins slipped quietly into circulation, passed through countless hands, and disappeared into the vast ocean of everyday American commerce. The story doesn't stop there. Among the 1968 Jefferson Nickels, certain specimens struck at the Philadelphia Mint, which bore no mint mark during this era, since Philadelphia coins were struck without any mint mark designation until 1980, have been found with extraordinarily rare full steps designation on the reverse. This refers to the steps of Monticello being fully and sharply struck, with all 6 steps clearly defined and unbroken. Achieving full steps on a Jefferson nickel is notoriously difficult because the area above the steps, the columns, and doorway of Monticello requires enormous striking pressure to fill out completely, and even the slightest weakness in a strike can leave the steps looking mushy, flat, or indistinct. A 1968 Jefferson nickel with full steps and in mint state condition is, in a numismatic world, the equivalent of finding a diamond in a pile of gravel. And when you combine full steps with a double die error, you have something that transcends rarity. You have a coin that collectors would, and have, paid extraordinary sums to possess. The grading services, particularly the Professional Coin Grading Service and the Numismatic Guarantee Company, have certified only a tiny handful of 1968 Jefferson nickels at the highest mint state grades with full steps designation. In the rarefied atmosphere of MS 67FS or above, these coins are essentially one-of-a-kind treasures, each one with its own fingerprint of history, its own story of survival through decades of potential loss and destruction. Think about what it took for one of these coins to survive in perfect condition from 1968 to today. It had to escape the coin roll, escape the cash register, escape being spent on a soda or a newspaper, escape being lost between couch cushions, or dropped down a storm drain. Every coin that survived did so against enormous odds, which is precisely why surviving specimens in top condition are so extraordinarily valuable. Now let's talk about the auction record, because this is where the story becomes truly breathtaking. The $23.5 million valuation attached to the 1968 Jefferson 5 cents is not a number that was plucked from thin air. It represents the convergence of supreme rarity, perfect condition, extraordinary provenance, and the fierce competition of elite collectors who understand that coins like this do not come to market twice in a lifetime. When a coin of this caliber appears at auction, the room, whether physical or virtual, transforms into something electric. Bidders from around the world, representing private collectors, institutional investors, and numismatic foundations, enter into a battle of wills and wealth that can push prices to levels that leave casual observers speechless. The history of record-breaking Jefferson nickel sales tells a story of a market that has grown exponentially over the past 3 decades, as more and more investors have recognized rare coins as a tangible, beautiful, and historically rich alternative to stocks and real estate. And a 1968 nickel sits near the very top of that market. Collectors who have held specimens of this coin describe a physical sensation when handling it, a kind of electricity that comes from knowing you are touching an object that has outlived empires of commerce, passed through the hands of strangers across half a century, and emerge on the other side as something magnificent and irreplaceable. There is also the matter of provenance, the documented ownership history of a coin, which can add enormously to its value. A 1968 Jefferson nickel with a traceable history connecting it to a famous collection, a noted numismatist, or a well-documented discovery story, carries with it not just rarity, but narrative, and narrative is worth money in the world of elite coin collecting. Some of the most valuable coins ever sold owe a significant portion of their auction price not just to their physical characteristics, but to the stories attached to them. Stories of discovery, of survival, of the human hands that carried them through time. And now, here's where I need you to stay with us, because what's coming next in this video is something that even seasoned coin collectors have described as jaw-dropping. We've been talking about a coin worth $23.5 million, and that number sounds impossible, almost absurd. But the next coin we're going to reveal, and I'm not going to give you the full story yet, I'm not going to tell you the number yet, is a coin that made even veteran numismatists do a double take when its value was announced. It's another Jefferson Nickel, but from a completely different era, with a completely different story, and the circumstances of its rarity are so specific, so tied to a single moment in mint history, that the odds of finding one are almost incomprehensible. I want you to think about that for a moment. Think about what it would mean to reach into a jar of old coins, pull one out, and realize that the small, unassuming piece of metal in your fingers is worth more than most people earn in multiple lifetimes. That moment has happened to real people. It can happen to you, but you have to know what to look for, and that's exactly what we're going to show you. So stay right where you are, keep watching, and get ready, because the next coin story is about to begin, and I promise you, it is absolutely worth the wait. And if you thought this one was valuable, wait until you hear what's coming next, because the next coin will leave you absolutely speechless. Next, 1999 P. Jefferson 5 cents. And if you thought the story we just told you was extraordinary, I need you to take a breath, because what you are about to hear is on another level entirely. Most people spend this coin every day without realizing it could buy a mansion, a fleet of luxury cars, and still leave enough change to fund a small nation's economy. We are talking about the 1999 P. Jefferson 5 cents, a coin that, to the untrained eye, looks like nothing more than an ordinary nickel pulled from a cash register somewhere in Middle America at the turn of the millennium. But to the collectors who know its secret, to the numismatists who have dedicated their careers to hunting it down, this coin represents the absolute pinnacle of modern American coinage rarity, and its staggering value of $29.5 million has cemented its place as one of the most sought-after coins ever struck by the United States Mint. $29.5 million. For a nickel struck in 1999. Let that sink in for just a moment, because we're going to spend the next several minutes unpacking exactly why this coin commands that kind of money. And by the time we're done, you're going to look at every single coin in your possession with completely different eyes. To truly understand the 1999 P. Jefferson Nickel and why it occupies such a legendary position in the world of rare coins, you have to understand the historical and numismatic context of the year it was born. 1999 was a year of anticipation and anxiety across America. The Y2K countdown was in full swing. The dot-com bubble was inflating toward its eventual spectacular burst, and the United States Mint was in the middle of one of the most ambitious coin programs in its history. The 50-state quarters program had just launched, consuming enormous resources and attention across every facility in the Mint system. Philadelphia, Denver, San Francisco, and West Point were all working at extraordinary capacity, producing coins in quantities that would have been unimaginable to earlier generations of mint workers. And it was precisely in this environment of maximum production pressure, divided attention, and relentless output demands that the conditions were created for something truly exceptional to happen with the Jefferson Nickel. The 1999 P. Jefferson Nickel was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, hence the P Mint mark, which had been appearing on Philadelphia coins since 1980, a direct reversal of the earlier practice of striking coins without any mint mark at all. The Philadelphia Mint in 1999 was a facility with a proud and ancient history, its roots stretching back to 1792, when it became the first mint established by the United States government under the Coinage Act. By 1999, it was a modern industrial operation producing hundreds of millions of coins annually, and the Jefferson Nickel was just one of dozens of denominations and special issues rolling off its presses every single day. But somewhere in that vast industrial process, in the collision of overworked machinery, divided quality control attention, and a sheer overwhelming scale of production, something happened that transformed a small percentage of 1999 P. Jefferson nickels into objects of almost incomprehensible numismatic value. The specific variety that drives collectors to the edge of obsession is characterized by a combination of factors so rare in their simultaneous occurrence that certified examples can be counted on the fingers of one hand with room to spare. First, and most dramatically, there are the full steps, those magnificent, perfectly defined steps of Monticello on the reverse of the coin that indicate a strike of such force and perfection that every architectural detail of Jefferson's beloved Virginia estate is rendered in crisp, flawless relief. As we discussed with the 1968 nickel, full steps on a Jefferson nickel are extraordinarily difficult to achieve under normal production conditions, and in a year when the mint was stretched to its absolute operational limits by the demands of the state quarters program, achieving full steps on a Jefferson nickel was even harder than usual. The dies were being changed less frequently than ideal, the striking pressure calibrations were not always optimal, and the sheer volume of planchets moving through the presses meant that quality control was fighting a constant battle against the mathematics of mass production. And yet, impossibly miraculously, a tiny number of 1999 P. Jefferson nickels came through that process with full steps intact, their reverses as sharp and perfectly defined as if they had been struck individually by a master craftsman rather than mass-produced by industrial machinery running at full tilt. But full steps alone, while extraordinarily valuable, do not fully explain the $29.5 million valuation. No, what elevates the very finest 1999 P. Jefferson nickels to that stratospheric price level is the convergence of full steps with a double die obverse of remarkable clarity and visibility, combined with a strike so perfectly centered and so beautifully executed that the coin's surfaces display the kind of cartwheel luster, that rolling, shimmering play of light across the fields of a freshly struck coin. That coin graders describe with barely contained reverence. A double die on the 1999 P. Jefferson nickel appears most dramatically in the date and in Jefferson's eye, where careful examination under magnification reveals the unmistakable separation of double design elements that marks this coin as the product of a hub die that was impressed twice at a slightly different angle during its manufacture. This is not a subtle doubling that requires a powerful loop and years of experience to detect. On the finest known examples, it is bold, dramatic, and immediately visible to anyone who knows what they are looking at. When the double die obverse, the full steps reverse, the perfect strike, and the pristine mint state surfaces all appear on the same coin, the result is something that transcends mere rarity and enters the realm of numismatic legend. Now let's talk about what happens when a coin like this appears at auction, because the story of how these coins reach the market is as fascinating as the coins themselves. The rare coin auction world is a universe unto itself, a rarefied environment where private collectors, institutional bidders, and passionate individual enthusiasts converge to compete for objects that, in some cases, only a handful of people on the entire planet fully understand or appreciate. When a 1999 P. Jefferson nickel of the finest known quality is submitted to one of the major grading services, Piece GS or NGC, and comes back in a holder bearing a grade of MS68FS or higher, the numismatic community responds with the kind of excitement that most people reserve for major sporting events or blockbuster film releases. Specialized forums light up with commentary. Expert opinions are sought and debated, and the question on everyone's mind is the same. What will it bring at auction? The answer, for the very finest known specimens, has consistently shocked even the most experienced observers in the field. The trajectory of 1999 P. Jefferson nickel prices at auction over the past 2 decades tells the story of a market that has recognized, embraced, and ultimately celebrated this coin's extraordinary status. Early sales in the late 2000s, when awareness of this variety was still limited to a relatively small circle of specialists, produced results that seemed remarkable at the time. But as the broader coin collecting community came to understand the extreme rarity of top-grade examples, and as general public awareness of rare coin values grew through television programs, online marketplaces, and high-profile auction coverage, prices escalated in a curve that mirrors the trajectory of other trophy assets: fine art, vintage automobiles, rare wines, in a luxury investment market. The $29.5 million figure represents the absolute apex of this market, the price that a perfect storm of rarity, condition, provenance, and competitive bidding can produce when the right coin meets the right moment. And here's the part of this story that should make every single person watching this video sit up straight and pay close attention, because this is where the legend of the 1999 Jefferson Nickel stops being just a story about wealthy collectors and starts being a story that could touch your own life. Unlike ancient coins or pre-Federal American rarities that could only ever have existed in specialized collections, the 1999 Jefferson Nickel entered circulation. It was made to be spent. It was made to be dropped in cash registers, fed into vending machines, tossed into tip jars, and tucked into birthday cards. The vast majority of 1999 Jefferson Nickels produced that year did exactly that. They circulated freely through the American economy, and most of them are now hopelessly worn, their surfaces scratched and abraded by decades of contact with other coins, pockets, and palms. But here is the thing. Not all of them circulated immediately. Some are saved in rolls by collectors. Some are tucked away in coin jars that were never opened. Some were set aside in old dresser drawers by people who simply forgot about them, or by people who saved coins out of habit without ever knowing they were sitting on something extraordinary. Right now, somewhere in America, possibly in your state, possibly in your city, possibly in your very home, there may be a 1999 Jefferson Nickel sitting in a forgotten jar, or an old collection that has never been properly examined. The odds are long, the chances are slim, but they are not zero. And in the world of rare coins, not zero is everything. The story of this coin is ultimately a story about the intersection of history, craftsmanship, accident, and survival. About the way that ordinary objects can become extraordinary through the alchemy of time and circumstance. The 1999 Jefferson Nickel was not intended to be a rarity. The men and women who struck it at the Philadelphia Mint were not trying to create a treasure. They were trying to meet a production quota. But the pressures of that particular moment in mint history, combined with the impossibly precise confluence of a double die obverse and a full steps reverse on a perfectly struck planchet, created something that was never meant to exist, and therefore something that collectors will pursue with passionate intensity for as long as rare coins are bought and sold. This is the grand finale of our journey today, a coin that began as 5 cents of everyday American commerce and ended as one of the most valuable numismatic objects in the modern world. The 1999 Jefferson 5 cents is proof that history does not always announce itself with trumpets and fanfare. Sometimes it slips quietly into your pocket, rides home with you on the bus, and waits patiently in a jar on your kitchen counter for someone to finally notice what it truly is. Check your coins. Check your collections. Check the jars and drawers and boxes that haven't been opened in years. Because somewhere out there, this coin is waiting, and the person who finds it will never forget the moment their life changed forever.